I walked into our office that Tuesday morning, expecting another productive day, but instead found moving crews hauling my team's desks toward the elevator. Greg, my boss, stood nearby with his arms crossed, wearing that smug expression I'd grown to recognize whenever he was about to deliver bad news. The basement, he announced cheerfully, would be our new temporary workspace, while the main floor underwent exciting restructuring for some remarkable new talent. As I watched 5 years of hard work and dedication literally being moved underground, something inside me shifted. I didn't argue or protest like he expected. Instead, I simply told my team to pack their personal belongings and follow my lead. 3 years ago, when I first joined Pinnacle Solutions as a junior manager, the client relations department consisted of exactly one person, me. The company had struggled for months to maintain relationships with their existing accounts, losing two major clients due to poor communication and missed deadlines. Management tasked me with rebuilding the entire operation from scratch, promising full support and resources to create something extraordinary. I threw myself into the challenge with everything I had. Working 14-hour days became normal as I developed new client communication protocols, established quality control measures, and created comprehensive training programs. Within 6 months, I had convinced management to let me hire 4 specialists who would transform our struggling department into something remarkable. Marcus joined first as our data analyst. His background in statistical modeling and client behavior prediction proved invaluable when we needed to understand why relationships had deteriorated. Patricia came next as our client coordinator, bringing 15 years of customer service experience and an intuitive understanding of client needs. James arrived as our project manager, skilled at juggling multiple contracts while maintaining attention to detail. Finally, Sandra completed our team as our quality specialist, ensuring every deliverable met the highest standards before reaching client hands. Together, we rebuilt the department piece by piece. Our first major victory came 8 months later when we successfully renewed the Henderson Group contract that everyone assumed was lost forever. The client had been furious about previous service failures, but our systematic approach to addressing their concerns and implementing new safeguards convinced them to give us another chance. The success continued building momentum. Within 18 months, we had increased overall client retention by 60% and brought in 4 new major accounts. Our crowning achievement came last year when we landed at Morrison Industries, a manufacturing giant with operations across 12 states. The $2 million annual contract represented the largest single client relationship in company history. Throughout this entire transformation, Greg took credit for our accomplishments during every board meeting and quarterly review. He would stride into conference rooms with elaborate presentations showcasing our department's growth, never mentioning the countless late nights my team invested or the innovative strategies we developed. According to Greg's version of events, his visionary leadership and strategic oversight had guided the department's remarkable turnaround. My team and I learned to accept this reality. As long as we could continue serving our clients effectively and building something meaningful together, Greg's ego seemed like a manageable price to pay for the resources and autonomy we needed. That Tuesday morning shattered this delicate arrangement completely. I had spent the previous day in Morrison's downtown headquarters, presenting our quarterly performance review and discussing expansion opportunities for the coming year. The meeting had gone exceptionally well with their executive team, praising our proactive communication and innovative problem-solving approaches. I left their offices, feeling optimistic about strengthening this crucial partnership even further. Returning to Pinnacle Solutions the next morning, I immediately sensed something was wrong. The elevator felt unusually crowded with moving equipment, and I could hear unfamiliar voices coming from our department's direction. As the doors opened on the 3rd floor, my heart sank at the sight before me. 3 people I had never seen before were examining our workspace with measuring tapes and notepads. A blonde woman in an expensive business suit was pointing at Marcus's desk while discussing monitor placement with a tall man in khakis. A third person younger with perfectly styled hair was taking photographs of our client presentation area. Greg had appeared from his office, practically glowing with excitement as he approached me. Behind him, moving crews were systematically dismantling workstations that had become familiar landmarks of our daily routine. Charity, perfect timing, he announced with false enthusiasm. I want you to meet our exciting new additions. Tyler, Amanda, and Brad will be joining the client relations team, and they bring some incredible credentials from their previous positions. Tyler stepped forward with an overly confident handshake, introducing himself as a former account executive from a consulting firm I had never heard of. Amanda mentioned something about strategic relationship management, while Brad seemed more interested in examining our client files than participating in introductions. Where exactly will they be working? I asked, already dreading the answer. Well, that's the beautiful part, Greg continued with theatrical gestures. We're implementing some fantastic optimization strategies. Your current team will be relocating to the lower-level workspace, which will give you more room to spread out and really focus on the detail-oriented aspects of client maintenance. Meanwhile, Tyler, Amanda, and Brad will handle the high-level relationship building and strategic planning from up here. The words hit me like physical blows. Client maintenance, detail-oriented aspects, lower-level workspace. Greg was systematically diminishing everything my team had built while positioning the newcomers as our superiors. Marcus appeared beside me, his face pale as he watched movers disconnecting his computer setup. Charity, what's happening? Nobody told us about any relocations. It's just temporary, Greg interjected before I could respond. A few weeks at most while we optimize the workflow and integrate our new talent. Think of it as an opportunity to really streamline operations. Patricia joined us carrying a box of her personal items with obvious distress written across her features. The basement has poor lighting and no windows. How are we supposed to conduct client video conferences down there? You'll figure something out, Greg replied dismissively. Your team is resourceful. Besides, most of your work involves data analysis and administrative tasks anyway. The new team will handle the client-facing responsibilities. That final comment revealed the full scope of Greg's betrayal. He was not simply relocating our workspace. He was systematically stripping away everything meaningful about our roles while positioning himself as the architect of positive change. As I watched my team's confusion and hurt, a cold fury began building in my chest. But something else was forming alongside the anger, a calculating patience that told me this situation required strategy rather than emotional outburst. Marcus pulled me aside as the movers continued their work. I overheard Tyler on the phone earlier, he whispered. He was talking to someone about his inside connection here and how he had been promised this office space months ago. This whole thing was planned way in advance. The revelation confirmed my growing suspicions. Greg had not simply decided to hire new team members and randomly chosen to relocate us. This was a calculated move that had been developing behind our backs for some time. I looked around at the chaos surrounding us, our accomplishments being literally moved underground, while strangers claimed credit for our work and made a decision that would change everything. Pack up your personal items, I told my team quietly. All of them. We're going to the basement, but this is not over. The basement workspace felt like a punishment designed to break our spirits. Fluorescent lights flickered intermittently above our hastily arranged desks, casting harsh shadows across concrete walls that had never been properly finished. The air conditioning barely reached this level, leaving us in stifling conditions that made concentration nearly impossible. But adversity has a way of bringing people closer together, and my team's determination only strengthened as we adapted to our new environment. What Greg intended as demoralization instead became fuel for our investigation into his true motives. Patricia was the first to notice the missing communications. As our client coordinator, she maintained detailed records of all incoming calls, emails, and meeting requests. While organizing her files in the basement, she discovered significant gaps in her message logs dating back 4 months. "Charity, look at this!" She called me over to her desk on our third day underground. I'm missing confirmation emails for at least 6 client meetings that I know happened. The calendar invitations were deleted from my system, but I still have my handwritten notes from the actual conversations. I examined her records carefully. The missing communications followed a clear pattern. They all involved strategic planning discussions or contract renewal conversations with major clients, particularly Morrison Industries. Marcus joined our investigation by reviewing the IT access logs that he could still retrieve through his analyst credentials. His findings sent chills through my entire body. Someone has been intercepting our emails for months, he reported grimly. The server logs show regular access to our accounts from Greg's administrative login, usually during evening hours when we weren't in the office. James discovered even more disturbing evidence while organizing his project files. Several of his detailed proposals for client process improvements had been copied and modified, with his name replaced by Tyler's signature. The altered versions included identical language formatting and strategic recommendations, but credited the new hire as the original author. "He's been stealing our work," James said, his voice thick with betrayal. "Everything we've developed over the past year is being repackaged as Tyler's innovative thinking." Sandra's quality control background proved essential in documenting the scope of Greg's deception. She created a comprehensive timeline showing how our team's communications had been systematically compromised, while the new hires received advanced preparation for their roles. "Look at this pattern," Sandra explained, pointing to her carefully organized evidence. "Every time we developed a new client strategy or solved a complex problem, Greg would schedule private meetings with Tyler, Amanda, and Brad within 48 hours. He's been feeding them our ideas and presenting them as the next generation of talent." The emotional impact on my team was devastating. Patricia questioned whether her 15 years of experience meant anything if it could be so easily dismissed. Marcus wondered if his analytical skills were truly valuable or just convenient for Greg's purposes. James began doubting his project management abilities, while Sandra struggled with the realization that her quality standards were being undermined by someone she had trusted. But my focus remained on understanding the complete scope of Greg's plan. His actions went far beyond simple office politics or favoritism. The systematic nature of his deception suggested a larger strategy that we needed to uncover before it was too late. Late that evening, while the rest of the building was empty, I used my department access codes to review Greg's recent calendar and communication records. What I discovered confirmed my worst fears about his intentions. Greg had been meeting with Tyler, Amanda, and Brad regularly for the past 4 months, always scheduling these sessions when my team was occupied with client responsibilities. The meeting notes, which he had carelessly left in a shared folder, revealed as his timeline for completely replacing our team. According to his plan, Phase 1 involved moving us to the basement while the new hires established themselves in our former workspace. Phase 2 would begin in 30 days with the gradual transfer of client responsibilities from our team to theirs. Phase 3, scheduled for 60 days from now, involved terminating our employment under the guise of department restructuring and efficiency improvements. Greg's notes included detailed strategies for managing the transition without disrupting client relationships. He planned to present our terminations as voluntary departures by dedicated employees who wanted to pursue new opportunities elsewhere. The new team would be introduced as carefully selected replacements who brought fresh perspectives and innovative approaches to client relations. Most chilling was his confidence that clients would embrace these changes enthusiastically. He had convinced himself that our methods were outdated and that Tyler, Amanda, and Brad represented the future of customer relationship management. His notes included dismissive comments about our team's traditional approaches and his excitement about implementing more dynamic modern strategies. As I read through his detailed plans for our professional destruction, my anger transformed into something more powerful: strategic determination. Greg had made a critical error by underestimating both our capabilities and the strength of our client relationships. His arrogance had blinded him to the reality of what we had built and how difficult it would be to replicate. The next morning, I called my team together in our basement workspace for a crucial conversation about our response to this betrayal. I shared everything I had discovered while emphasizing the importance of maintaining our professionalism throughout whatever came next. Greg thinks he can replace us with people who have no understanding of our clients or our methods, I told them. He believes that relationships we've built over years can be transferred like office equipment. That assumption will be his downfall. Marcus looked up from his computer with the first genuine smile I had seen from him since the relocation. "You have a plan, don't you?" "I have something better than a plan," I replied. "I have patience and the certainty that competence always defeats arrogance in the end. We're going to continue doing exactly what we've always done, serving our clients with dedication and excellence. Greg and his new team will reveal their limitations soon enough." Patricia nodded thoughtfully. "What about documenting the contract violations and HR policy breaches we've discovered?" "We'll continue gathering evidence, but we won't file complaints yet," I decided. Greg is convinced that he's orchestrating a brilliant transformation. Let's give him enough rope to hang himself with his own overconfidence. The basement workspace suddenly felt less like a prison and more like a strategic base of operations. My team's energy began shifting from dejection to focused determination as we prepared for the battle ahead. We had no idea how quickly Greg's incompetence would create opportunities for our vindication. Working late had become our new normal in the basement, partly due to the poor lighting that made daytime productivity challenging, but mostly because I needed quiet time to research our legal situation without Greg's interference. The building emptied by 7 each evening, leaving us free to investigate the full implications of his reckless decisions. On Friday night, while my team was finally heading home after another exhausting week, I remained behind to examine the Morrison Industries contract in detail. As our department director, I had negotiated most of the terms personally, but the final document contained so much legal language that I had never studied every clause carefully. What I discovered that night changed everything. Buried in Section 12 of the contract under Personnel and Service Continuity Requirements, Morrison Industries had included specific language about their expectations for account management stability. The clause stated that any changes to key personnel assigned to their account required 90 days, written notice, and explicit client approval before implementation. More importantly, the contract specifically named our team members as essential personnel. Marcus was designated as the primary data analyst responsible for their quarterly performance reports. Patricia was identified as the main point of contact for all coordination activities. James was listed as the project manager for their expansion initiatives, while Sandra was named as the quality assurance specialist for all deliverables. The legal implications were staggering. Greg could not simply replace our team with new hires without Morrison's consent and a lengthy transition period. Any attempt to do so would constitute a material breach of contract terms, potentially voiding the entire agreement and exposing Pinnacle Solutions to significant financial penalties. But the most shocking revelation came in Section 15, which addressed contract modifications and renewal procedure. Morrison Industries had included language requiring that any contract amendments or renewal negotiations be conducted by the original team members who had established the relationship. They specifically stated that their decision to work with Pinnacle Solutions was based on confidence in our team's capabilities and track record. I sat in that flickering basement light, reading the same paragraphs over and over, hardly believing what I was seeing. Greg had built his entire restructuring plan around the assumption that client relationships could be transferred seamlessly to his new hires. He had no idea that the contract legally prevented exactly what he was attempting to do. My phone buzzed with a text message from Patricia. She had left her reading glasses at her desk and was returning to retrieve them. I waited for her to arrive, eager to share this incredible discovery with someone who would understand its significance. "Charity, you're still here," she said as she emerged from the elevator. You really need to get some rest. This situation is consuming all of us. Patricia, sit down and read this, I said, pointing to the relevant contract sections. Tell me if I'm interpreting this correctly. She put on her glasses and carefully reviewed the language I had highlighted. Her expression shifted from curiosity to amazement as she realized what she was reading. This means Greg cannot legally replace us with the new team without Morrison's approval, she whispered. And look at this renewal clause. They specifically want our team to handle all future negotiations. There's more, I continued, showing her additional sections. Morrison Industries conducted extensive background checks on each of us before signing this contract. They specifically mentioned our track record and expertise as deciding factors in their partnership decision. The new team has no standing with them whatsoever. Patricia leaned back in her chair, absorbing the full implications of our discovery. Does Greg know about these clauses? Based on his behavior, I seriously doubt it, I replied. He's been so focused on taking credit for our successes that he probably never bothered reading the actual contract details. His signature is on the document as a department head, but I handled all the substantive negotiations. We spent the next hour reviewing every section of the Morrison contract, identifying additional clauses that supported our position. The client had been remarkably thorough in protecting their interests, requiring Pinnacle Solutions to maintain continuity in personnel methodology and communication protocols throughout the contract term. Patricia pulled up her calendar on her phone, checking our upcoming commitments with Morrison. We have their quarterly review meeting scheduled for next Wednesday. That's just 5 days away. What happens when Tyler tries to lead that presentation instead of you? That's exactly what I've been wondering, I admitted. Morrison's executives specifically requested our team's participation in that meeting. They want to discuss expansion opportunities for next year, including potential additional contracts worth millions of dollars. The pieces of Greg's inevitable downfall were falling into place with perfect clarity. His new team had no knowledge of Morrison's specific requirements, preferences, or business culture. They had not been involved in building the relationship or understanding the client's complex operational needs. Most critically, they had no legal authority to represent Pinnacle Solutions in contract discussions with Morrison Industries. Patricia's phone rang, interrupting our analysis. The caller ID showed Morrison Industries, which was unusual for a Friday evening. She answered with her typical professional warmth, putting the call on speaker so I could participate. Patricia, this is David Morrison, the operations director, came the familiar voice. I hope I'm not calling too late, but we've been hearing some concerning rumors about changes to your team structure. My heart rate increased as I realized Morrison was already aware of the office reshuffling. Patricia maintained her composure, perfectly responding with careful honesty. David, we appreciate you reaching out with your concerns. Our team's commitment to serving Morrison Industries remains absolutely unchanged. What specific rumors have you been hearing? One of our vendor contacts mentioned seeing unfamiliar faces in your offices, and we received a rather odd email yesterday from someone named Tyler introducing himself as the new strategic relationship manager for our account. We never requested any changes to our account management team. Patricia and I exchanged meaningful glances. Tyler had already begun overstepping his authority by contacting Morrison directly without authorization or proper introduction. David, I can assure you that our core team remains fully dedicated to your account. Patricia responded diplomatically. We would never make changes to your service team without proper consultation and approval. The email from Tyler was sent without appropriate oversight, and we'll address that communication immediately. Good to hear, David replied, his relief evident. Morrison Industries chose Pinnacle Solutions specifically because of your team's expertise and track record. Any changes to that arrangement would require serious discussion at the executive level. We're looking forward to Wednesday's quarterly review with your regular team. After ending the call, Patricia and I sat in stunned silence for several moments. Morrison Industries had just confirmed everything we had discovered in the contract language. They expected our team to continue managing their account and would resist any attempts to replace us with unfamiliar personnel. Greg has created a disaster, Patricia said quietly. Tyler's unauthorized contact with Morrison could jeopardize the entire relationship. I pulled out my phone and called Marcus, James, and Sandra, asking them to return to the office for an emergency meeting. They deserved to know about this development immediately, and we needed to plan our response carefully. Within an hour, our entire team was gathered in the basement workspace, reviewing the contract clauses and discussing Morrison's phone call. The mood shifted from resignation to cautious optimism as everyone understood the strength of our position. Marcus was the first to voice what we were all thinking. Greg has no idea what he's walking into. The Morrison Quarterly Review is going to expose his new team's complete lack of preparation. What should we do? James asked. Do we warn him about the contract requirements? I considered the question carefully before responding. We're going to continue doing our jobs exactly as we always have. Greg made these decisions without consulting us or understanding the consequences. If he wants to learn about contract requirements and client expectations, he can discover them the same way we did through inexperience. Sandra nodded approvingly. Morrison Industries deserves the best possible service. If Greg's new team cannot provide that level of quality, the client will notice immediately. As my team finally headed home that night, I remained in the basement for another hour, reading through our other major client contracts. What I found confirmed my suspicions. Morrison Industries was not unique in their personnel requirements and continuity expectations. Multiple clients had included similar clauses protecting their relationships with our specific team members. Greg's restructuring plan violated contractual obligations worth over $4 million in annual revenue. His ignorance of legal requirements had created potential liabilities that could devastate Pinnacle Solutions' client relationships and financial stability. But I was not going to save him from his own arrogance. Greg had chosen to systematically undermine and replace my team without consideration for consequences. Now he would discover those consequences firsthand, and I was going to let karma handle the justice he deserved. Wednesday's Morrison Industries Quarterly Review would be the beginning of his education. Monday morning brought a false sense of normalcy to Pinnacle Solutions, with Greg strutting around the main floor like a general surveying his conquered territory. Tyler, Amanda, and Brad had settled into our former workspace with obvious satisfaction, spreading their materials across desks that still bore the subtle marks of our 3 years of dedicated work. From our basement exile, we could hear fragments of their conversations through the ventilation system. Tyler's voice carried particularly well as he made phone calls, his tone suggesting complete confidence in his new role as Morrison Industries' primary contact. "This should be interesting," Marcus commented dryly as he organized his data analysis files. Despite the poor lighting and cramped conditions, he had managed to maintain his meticulous standards for client reporting. Patricia was monitoring our email systems carefully, noting which communications were being redirected to the new team and which messages were somehow still reaching us directly. Her organizational skills had become even more essential in our challenging circumstances. Morrison's procurement team sent their quarterly data request directly to me this morning, she reported. The email specifically mentioned that they want our usual comprehensive analysis, not some simplified summary. James was working on project timelines for Morrison's expansion plans documents that would be crucial for Wednesday's quarterly review. His attention to detail had always impressed our clients, and the complexity of Morrison's requirements demanded exactly his type of methodical approach. Tyler asked me to prepare a brief overview of Morrison's project status, James said with barely concealed frustration. When I showed him the 40-page detailed analysis Morrison expects, he told me to condense it into 3 bullet points. Sandra had been quietly reviewing Morrison's quality standards and compliance requirements, preparing the documentation they would need for their quarterly assessment. Her expertise in quality control had helped Morrison achieve several industry certifications, strengthening their market position significantly. Amanda requested copies of our quality control protocols this morning, Sandra mentioned. When I explained that Morrison requires specific testing procedures and documentation standards, she said they would figure out a simpler approach. The pattern was becoming clear. Greg's new team was attempting to replace our comprehensive detail-oriented service model with superficial relationship management that completely ignored our clients' actual needs and expectations. Tuesday brought the first signs of impending disaster. Tyler's morning phone call with Morrison Industries, which we could hear through the thin basement ceiling, quickly devolved into obvious confusion. Morrison's operations manager was asking specific questions about production efficiency metrics, regulatory compliance status, and supply chain optimization recommendations. Tyler's responses consisted primarily of requests for clarification and promises to follow up with detailed information later. From our basement workspace, we could hear his increasing frustration as the conversation revealed his complete lack of knowledge about Morrison's business operations. "I'll need to review the files and get back to you," became Tyler's standard response to every substantive question. By the end of the 20-minute call, Morrison's manager was clearly disappointed with the lack of preparation and expertise. Amanda's afternoon attempt to handle Morrison's procurement inquiry went even worse. She confidently promised delivery schedules and cost estimates without understanding Morrison's complex approval processes or regulatory requirements. Her commitments directly contradicted established protocols that had taken months to develop and implement. Brad's contribution involved sending Morrison a generic client satisfaction survey that completely ignored their specific feedback preferences and reporting requirements. The survey asked basic questions about overall satisfaction while missing the detailed performance metrics Morrison used to evaluate vendor relationships. Meanwhile, in our basement workspace, we continued providing the level of service Morrison Industries had come to expect from Pinnacle Solutions. Patricia maintained her careful coordination of all communication channels, ensuring that important messages reached appropriate team members, despite the administrative chaos above us. Marcus completed his quarterly data analysis, producing the comprehensive reports Morrison required for their internal planning processes. His work included the trend analysis, performance benchmarking, and strategic recommendations based on 3 years of accumulated data about their business patterns. James finalized the project management documentation Morrison needed for their expansion planning, including detailed timelines, resource allocation plans, and risk assessment protocols. His reports addressed every aspect of their complex operational requirements with the thoroughness they had learned to depend on. Sandra prepared the quality assurance documentation Morrison required for their compliance reporting, including detailed testing results, certification status updates, and process improvement recommendations. Her work met the exacting standards Morrison needed to maintain their industry leadership position. By Tuesday evening, we had essentially prepared for Wednesday's quarterly review. Once properly in our basement exile, and once inadequately through Tyler, Amanda, and Brad's superficial efforts. The contrast between our approaches would become evident very quickly. Wednesday morning arrived with palpable tension throughout the building. Greg had spent the previous day coaching his new team on presentation techniques and relationship-building strategies, completely ignoring the technical aspects of Morrison's quarterly review requirements. At 9:30, Morrison Industries' executive team arrived at Pinnacle Solutions for their scheduled quarterly review meeting. David Morrison, the operations director, led the group accompanied by their procurement manager, compliance officer, and strategic planning coordinator. Tyler, Amanda, and Brad took their positions in the main conference room armed with generic presentation slides and superficial talking points about client relationships and service excellence. Greg introduced them with obvious pride, emphasizing their innovative approaches and fresh perspectives. The meeting began cordially enough with polite introductions and general discussion about Morrison's business performance during the previous quarter, but the atmosphere changed rapidly when Morrison's team began asking specific questions about operational metrics and strategic recommendations. David Morrison requested an update on the supply chain optimization project, that James had been coordinating for the past 6 months. Tyler responded with vague comments about ongoing assessment and future improvement opportunities, clearly unaware that Morrison expected a detailed progress report with specific performance measurements. The procurement manager asked about cost reduction initiatives that Sandra had been developing as part of Morrison's efficiency improvement program. Amanda promised to investigate potential savings opportunities, apparently not realizing that Morrison expected concrete recommendations based on 3/4 of detailed analysis. Morrison's compliance officer inquired about regulatory documentation updates that Marcus had been tracking as part of their certification maintenance requirements. Brad offered to research current compliance standards, obviously unfamiliar with the extensive regulatory monitoring that Morrison required from their vendors. Within 30 minutes, Morrison's executives were exchanging concerned glances as they realized that Pinnacle Solutions' new team had no knowledge of ongoing projects' established protocols or Morrison's specific business requirements. David Morrison finally interrupted the increasingly awkward presentation. "I'm confused about something. Where is Charity's team? We specifically requested their participation in this quarterly review because they understand our operational needs and project requirements." Greg's confident demeanor began cracking as he attempted to explain the recent reorganization without admitting that he had relegated the experienced team to basement workspace. "Our department has undergone some exciting optimization, and Tyler's team represents our new strategic approach to client relations. But what about the detailed analysis we requested for our expansion planning?" Morrison's strategic planning coordinator asked. "We need specific data about production capacity, regulatory compliance status, and supply chain efficiency. Your presentation doesn't address any of these requirements." Tyler, Amanda, and Brad exchanged helpless looks as they realized their generic relationship management approach had completely missed Morrison's expectations for substantive business analysis and strategic support. The quarterly review that was supposed to demonstrate Pinnacle Solutions' value to Morrison Industries instead revealed the catastrophic impact of Greg's personnel decisions on client service quality. David Morrison stood up from the conference table, his dissatisfaction unmistakable. "We need to reconvene this meeting when your experienced team is available to provide the analysis and recommendations we require. Morrison Industries cannot make strategic decisions based on the superficial overview we've received today." As Morrison's executives left the building, Greg's face reflected the dawning realization that his new team had failed spectacularly in their first major client interaction. From our basement workspace, we could hear the heated conversation that followed in the main conference room. Tyler was attempting to blame insufficient preparation time, Amanda complained about inadequate background information, and Brad suggested that Morrison's expectations were unreasonably detailed. Greg's voice rose above their excuses as he began to understand that his restructuring plan had created a crisis that threatened Pinnacle Solutions' most valuable client relationship. But we were not finished yet. Morrison Industries' dissatisfaction with Wednesday's meeting was just the beginning of Greg's education about the consequences of his arrogance. Thursday morning brought an ominous silence to the main floor that we could feel even in our basement workspace. Greg had arrived early and spent most of the previous evening making phone calls, his voice carrying through the building's ventilation system with increasing desperation as he attempted to manage the fallout from Morrison Industries' disastrous quarterly review. Patricia was monitoring our department email when the message that changed everything arrived at 8:45. The sender's address made her heart skip. CEO Patricia Williams had sent an urgent meeting request to Greg with copies to Human Resources and the entire executive team. "This is it," Patricia whispered, showing me the email on her screen. "CEO Williams wants a comprehensive explanation of the Morrison Industries situation by 10 this morning." Marcus looked up from his data analysis work, his expression mixing satisfaction with concern. "Morrison's complaint must have reached the highest levels pretty quickly. We had learned through Patricia's client communication channels that David Morrison had called CEO Williams directly after Wednesday's failed quarterly review. Morrison Industries represented nearly 20% of Pinnacle Solutions' annual revenue, giving them significant influence with executive leadership when they expressed serious concerns. James was updating his project management files when Greg appeared at the top of the basement stairs, his usual confidence replaced by obvious anxiety. He descended slowly as if each step was painful before approaching my desk with uncharacteristic hesitancy. "Charity, we need to discuss yesterday's Morrison meeting," he began, his voice lacking its typical commanding tone. "There seems to have been some miscommunication about their expectations." I looked up from my work with carefully neutral expression. What kind of miscommunication? They were expecting more detailed analysis than Tyler's team was prepared to provide. Greg continued, clearly struggling to frame the situation without admitting fault. "I may have underestimated the complexity of their quarterly review requirements." Sandra joined our conversation carrying the comprehensive quality documentation that Morrison had requested. Greg Morrison Industries expects 40 pages of detailed performance analysis, compliance documentation, and strategic recommendations. Your new team prepared 3 slides with generic bullet points. Greg's face flushed as he realized the magnitude of his team's inadequate preparation. "Can your team help them get up to speed quickly? We need to reschedule the Morrison meeting for next week." "That might be difficult," I replied calmly. "Morrison specifically requested our team's participation in the original meeting. When Tyler's team couldn't answer their questions, Morrison questioned why we weren't there." "What exactly did Morrison say about the team changes?" Greg asked, his anxiety becoming more apparent. Patricia consulted her detailed notes from Morrison's communications. "David Morrison told me directly that Morrison Industries chose Pinnacle Solutions because of our team's expertise and track record. He was surprised by Tyler's lack of knowledge about their business operations and ongoing projects." Greg's phone buzzed with a text message that made his face go pale. "CEO Williams wants to see me in 10 minutes. What should I tell her about the Morrison situation?" Marcus looked up from his computer with barely concealed satisfaction. "You could start by explaining why you reassigned the team that Morrison specifically wants to work with, and why Tyler made unauthorized contact with Morrison without understanding their communication protocols," James added helpfully, "and why your new team had no knowledge of Morrison's regulatory compliance requirements or ongoing projects," Sandra continued. Greg realized that his questioning had only emphasized the scope of his mistakes. He hurried back upstairs without another word, leaving my team to exchange meaningful glances about the justice finally beginning to unfold. At 10:15, Patricia received another email that confirmed our suspicions about the emergency meeting's outcome. CEO Williams had requested detailed documentation about the Morrison Industries relationship, including all contracts, correspondence, and performance records dating back 3 years. "She wants everything," Patricia reported with quiet satisfaction. "Contract terms, client communication logs, project management files, quality control records, and performance metrics." The request was particularly significant because our team maintained all of Morrison's historical documentation. Greg's new team had no access to the detailed records that CEO Williams needed to understand the relationship's complexity and value. Marcus began preparing the comprehensive data analysis that would demonstrate Morrison's account growth and profitability under our management. His reports would show how our systematic approach had transformed Morrison from a moderately satisfied client into Pinnacle Solutions' most valuable partnership. James compiled his detailed project management records documenting the successful completion of multiple complex initiatives that had strengthened Morrison's confidence in our capabilities. His timelines and achievement summaries would demonstrate the depth of expertise required to maintain this relationship. Sandra organized her quality control documentation, proving how our rigorous standards had helped Morrison achieve industry certifications and regulatory compliance that enhanced their market position. Her records would show the tangible value our team brought to the client relationship. At 11:30, Patricia received a phone call that confirmed the seriousness of CEO Williams' investigation. Morrison Industries' David Morrison was being asked to provide a detailed assessment of Pinnacle Solutions' service quality and his team's specific requirements for the relationship to continue. David wants to schedule a conference call with our team this afternoon, Patricia reported. He specifically requested to speak with you, Charity, along with Marcus, James, Sandra, and me. No mention of Tyler, Amanda, or Brad. The timing was perfect. Morrison Industries was essentially conducting their own evaluation of Greg's personnel decisions, and they clearly preferred working with our experienced team rather than his inexperienced replacements. At 2 o'clock, we gathered around Patricia's desk phone for the conference call with Morrison Industries. David Morrison's voice was warm but serious as he explained the purpose of their inquiry. Charity, we've been working with your team for nearly 2 years, and the relationship has exceeded our expectations in every measure, he began. Yesterday's meeting with the new team raised significant concerns about Pinnacle Solutions' ability to continue providing the level of service we require. David, our commitment to Morrison Industries remains absolutely unchanged, I responded confidently. Our team's expertise, knowledge of your operations, and dedication to your success are exactly what they've always been. That's what we hope to hear, David replied with obvious relief. Morrison Industries has invested considerable time and resources in building this partnership. We cannot afford disruptions to the relationship or reductions in service quality. Marcus provided a detailed overview of Morrison's account performance, emphasizing the consistent growth and improved efficiency metrics that had resulted from our collaborative approach. His analysis demonstrated the quantifiable value of maintaining continuity in account management. James discussed the ongoing expansion projects that required careful coordination and deep understanding of Morrison's operational requirements. His expertise was essential for managing the complex timelines and resource allocation needed for successful implementation. Sandra explained the quality control processes that had helped Morrison achieve their recent industry certifications. Her work was directly tied to Morrison's competitive advantages and market positioning. Patricia coordinated the discussion expertly, ensuring that Morrison's executives understood our team's continued availability and commitment to their success. The call concluded with David Morrison making a statement that would prove crucial in the events that followed. Charity, please understand that Morrison Industries specifically contracted with Pinnacle Solutions because of your team's capabilities, he said firmly. Any changes to our account management team would require extensive discussion and approval at our executive level. We expect to continue working with the people who built this successful relationship. After ending the call, we sat in our basement workspace with the growing realization that Morrison Industries had just provided CEO Williams with the client perspective she needed to understand the full impact of Greg's decisions. At 3:45, Patricia's email alert chimed with a message that confirmed the dramatic shift in our situation. CEO Williams was requesting an emergency meeting with our team to discuss Morrison Industries' account management requirements and our role in maintaining the relationship. She wants to meet with us directly, Patricia said with amazement. Tomorrow morning at 9 in the executive conference room. Greg's restructuring plan was crumbling as senior management realized that his personnel decisions threatened Pinnacle Solutions' most valuable client partnership. The basement workspace that was supposed to diminish our importance had instead become our base of operations for reclaiming our rightful positions. But we had no idea that the investigation into Greg's decisions would uncover corruption that went far beyond simple incompetence and arrogance. Friday morning brought an electric tension to Pinnacle Solutions that was palpable from the moment we entered the building. CEO Patricia Williams had arrived early, and her executive assistant had been making calls to schedule additional meetings with human resources, legal, and the external auditing firm that handled the company's compliance reviews. Our 9 o'clock meeting was scheduled for the executive conference room on the 5th floor, a space we had visited only occasionally for major presentations or annual reviews. As we rode the elevator up from our basement workspace, I felt the symbolic significance of this vertical journey from exile back toward recognition. CEO Williams greeted us personally at the conference room entrance, her demeanor professional but warm as she invited us to take seats around the polished mahogany table. Also present were Human Resources Director Linda Chen, Legal Counsel Robert Hayes, and External Auditor Michael Torres, indicating that this meeting had implications far beyond simple personnel management. Before we begin, CEO Williams announced, "I want you to know that Morrison Industries contacted me directly yesterday afternoon to express serious concerns about recent changes to their account management team. Their feedback has prompted a comprehensive review of departmental operations and management decisions." She gestured toward a stack of documents on the conference table. "We've been reviewing the Morrison contract terms, client communications, and performance records that you provided yesterday. What we've discovered raises significant questions about recent personnel decisions and their potential impact on client relationships." Legal counsel Hayes opened his folder and consulted several highlighted pages. The Morrison contract includes specific clauses requiring their approval for any changes to designated account personnel. These requirements were apparently not considered when the recent team restructuring was implemented. Michael Torres, the external auditor, looked up from his laptop where he had been reviewing financial data. Morrison Industries represents 19.7% of company revenue. The contract violation issues could expose Pinnacle Solutions to significant financial penalties and potential contract termination. CEO Williams turned her attention directly to me. "Charity, we need to understand exactly what happened with the recent department reorganization. Morrison's executives specifically mentioned that they contracted with Pinnacle Solutions because of your team's expertise and track record." I provided a comprehensive overview of Greg's actions, from his decision to relocate our team to the basement through his installation of inexperienced new hires in our former positions. I explained how his personnel changes had been implemented without client consultation or consideration of contractual obligations. Marcus presented his analysis of Morrison's account performance under our management, demonstrating consistent growth in client satisfaction, service quality, and revenue generation. His data showed that Morrison's relationship with Pinnacle Solutions had strengthened significantly since our team began managing their account. Patricia documented the communication breakdowns that had occurred when Greg's new team attempted to handle Morrison's requirements without understanding their specific needs and expectations. Her records showed a clear deterioration in client responsiveness and service quality following the personnel changes. James explained the complexity of Morrison's ongoing expansion projects and the expertise required to manage their detailed requirements successfully. His project management records demonstrated the depth of knowledge needed to maintain continuity in client service. Sandra reviewed the quality control standards that Morrison required from their vendors, emphasizing how our systematic approach had helped them achieve industry certifications that enhance their competitive position. Her documentation proved the value our team brought to the client relationship. CEO Williams listened carefully to our presentations, taking detailed notes and asking clarifying questions about specific aspects of our work with Morrison Industries. Her focus was clearly on understanding both the client relationship's value and the potential consequences of disrupting it. "Based on what you've presented," she concluded, "it appears that the recent personnel changes were implemented without proper consideration of client requirements or contractual obligations. This situation requires immediate correction to preserve our relationship with Morrison Industries." Human Resources Director Chen consulted her files before addressing additional concerns that had emerged during the investigation. "Our review of departmental operations has revealed several policy violations and management practices that require further investigation." She explained that multiple employees had reported concerns about Greg's management style, including unauthorized access to team communications, credit taking for subordinates' work, and favoritism in personnel decisions. The pattern of complaints suggested systemic problems that extended beyond the Morrisons' situation. Legal counsel Hayes reviewed additional findings that had emerged during the contract analysis. We've discovered that Greg approved several client communication changes without proper authorization or documentation. Some of these changes violated established protocols and contractual commitments. But the most shocking revelation came from external auditor Torres, whose financial analysis had uncovered irregularities that none of us had anticipated. During our review of departmental expenses and external communications, he announced gravely, we discovered evidence of unauthorized financial transactions and suspicious contact with external parties. Torres explained that Greg's financial records showed several unexplained deposits to his personal accounts, coinciding with his decision to hire Tyler, Amanda, and Brad. More disturbing was the discovery of extensive communication between Greg and Davidson Corporation, Morrison Industries' primary competitor in several market segments. Davidson Corporation has been attempting to acquire Morrison Industries' business for over a year, Torres continued. Our investigation suggests that Greg may have been providing Davidson with confidential information about Morrison's operations and strategic plans. The room fell silent as the implications of this revelation sank in. Greg had not simply made poor personnel decisions based on ego or incompetence. He had apparently been engaged in corporate espionage, deliberately undermining Morrison's relationship with Pinnacle Solutions to benefit a competitor. CEO Williams' expression hardened as she absorbed the scope of Greg's betrayal. This investigation is now a matter for law enforcement. We're dealing with potential corporate espionage fraud and breach of fiduciary duty. Legal counsel Hayes was already making phone calls to coordinate with federal investigators who specialized in corporate crime. The evidence suggested that Greg's actions had put Pinnacle Solutions at risk of criminal liability and civil lawsuits. Within 2 hours, federal agents arrived at Pinnacle Solutions to interview witnesses and collect evidence related to Greg's activities. His office was sealed as a crime scene, and his computer systems were confiscated for forensic analysis. Greg was escorted from the building in handcuffs that afternoon, his arrogance finally replaced by the reality of criminal charges including corporate espionage, wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit commercial theft. Tyler, Amanda, and Brad were terminated immediately when the investigation revealed their role in Greg's scheme. They had been hired specifically to disrupt Morrison's relationship with Pinnacle Solutions, creating opportunities for Davidson Corporation to acquire the account through deceptive practices. CEO Williams called an emergency company meeting that afternoon to address the crisis and announce immediate changes to restore client confidence and operational integrity. Effective immediately, she announced to the assembled employees, Charity's team will resume full responsibility for the Morrison Industries account and all related client relationships. Their expertise and integrity represent the values that Pinnacle Solutions was built on. She continued by outlining new policies designed to prevent similar breaches of trust and protect client relationships from internal threats. The company would invest in enhanced security measures, ethics, training, and management oversight to ensure that such betrayals could never happen again. But the most meaningful moment came when CEO Williams invited our team to join her in the executive conference room for a private conversation about our future with Pinnacle Solutions. Your dedication and professionalism during this crisis have been exemplary, she told us sincerely. You maintained your commitment to client service despite facing betrayal and professional sabotage. That kind of integrity deserves recognition and reward. The basement workspace that had been our prison for 2 weeks was about to become a memory, as justice finally prevailed over corruption and competence triumphed over deception. 6 months later, I stood in my new corner office on the 5th floor, looking out at the city skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows that seemed impossible after those weeks in the fluorescent-lit basement. The morning sun cast warm light across the mahogany desk, where Morrison Industries' contract renewal documents awaited my signature, a 5-year agreement worth $4.8 million, the largest single-client contract in Pinnacle Solutions' history. The transformation had been remarkable in ways I never could have imagined during those dark days when Greg's betrayal seemed like the end of everything we had built. Morrison Industries had not only forgiven the disruption to their service, but had actually strengthened their partnership with Pinnacle Solutions after learning about our team's dedication during the crisis. David Morrison had become one of our strongest advocates, recommending our services to 3 other major manufacturers who were now considering contracts with our company. The way your team maintained professionalism and service quality while facing internal sabotage convinced us that we had chosen the right partner, David had told CEO Williams during the contract renewal negotiations. Charity and her team demonstrated the kind of integrity and competence that Morrison Industries values above all else. Marcus had been promoted to Senior Data Analytics Director, leading an expanded team of analysts who supported multiple major accounts. His expertise in client behavior modeling had become essential for developing new business relationships and maintaining existing partnerships. The cramped basement desk had been replaced by a state-of-the-art analytics center with advanced computer systems and dedicated research resources. Patricia now served as client relations coordinator for the entire company, training new employees in the communication standards and relationship management techniques that had made our Morrison partnership so successful. Her 15 years of experience had finally received the recognition it deserved, along with a significant salary increase and comprehensive benefits package. James had been appointed project management director, overseeing all major client initiatives and expansion projects throughout Pinnacle Solutions. His methodical approach and attention to detail had become the company standard for project execution. The quality and thoroughness that Morrison Industries had valued was now being applied to serve all of our clients. Sandra had earned promotion to Quality Assurance Director, establishing company-wide standards that ensured every client received the level of excellence that had characterized our Morrison relationship. Her systematic approach to quality control had helped 3 additional clients achieve industry certifications, strengthening their market positions and increasing their loyalty to Pinnacle Solutions. The basement workspace had been converted into additional storage space, but not before CEO Williams had placed a commemorative plaque on the wall, recognizing it as the location where integrity and dedication had triumphed over corruption and betrayal. Greg's criminal trial had concluded 3 months earlier with his conviction on multiple federal charges, including corporate espionage, wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit commercial theft. He was serving a 4-year federal prison sentence while facing additional civil lawsuits from both Pinnacle Solutions and Morrison Industries for the damages his actions had caused. Davidson Corporation, the competitor that had corrupted Greg, was facing federal investigation for their role in the espionage scheme. Their attempts to acquire Morrison Industries' business through deceptive practices had backfired, spectacularly damaging their reputation throughout the industry and resulting in the loss of several major contracts. Tyler, Amanda, and Brad had been terminated immediately after their involvement in Greg's scheme was discovered. Their professional reputations had been destroyed by the criminal investigation, making it unlikely that they would find employment in the industry again. Justice had been served not only legally, but professionally. The impact on Pinnacle Solutions had been overwhelmingly positive despite the initial crisis. CEO Williams had used the situation as an opportunity to strengthen company culture, implementing new ethics policies, management training programs, and employee protection measures that prevented future abuse of power. This experience taught us that our most valuable assets are the people who serve our clients with dedication and integrity, she had announced during the company's annual meeting. Charity's team exemplified those values under the most difficult circumstances, and they deserve our gratitude and support. The recognition had extended beyond Pinnacle Solutions to the broader business community. Industry publications had covered our story as an example of how ethical leadership and professional excellence could overcome corruption and sabotage. Speaking invitations had come from business schools and professional organizations wanting to learn from our experience. But the most meaningful recognition had come from our clients themselves. Morrison Industries had nominated our team for the National Client Service Excellence Award, citing our dedication to their success, despite facing internal betrayal. The nomination letter specifically mentioned how we had maintained service quality while working in inadequate basement conditions because we refused to let external circumstances affect our commitment to client satisfaction. True professionalism, the nomination letter stated, is demonstrated not when conditions are perfect, but when dedicated people choose to do the right thing despite facing adversity and injustice. The award ceremony was scheduled for next month, and Morrison Industries' executive team planned to attend as our guests. David Morrison had personally written the speech he would deliver when presenting the award, emphasizing how our team's integrity had strengthened his company's confidence in business partnerships. Personal growth had been just as important as professional recognition during these transformative months. The basement experience had taught me that leadership meant protecting and supporting the people who trusted you, even when doing so required personal sacrifice. I had learned to recognize manipulation and abuse of power, developing the skills needed to stand up for justice when necessary. My team had discovered their own strength and resilience through the crisis. Patricia had gained confidence in her ability to handle complex client relationships under pressure. Marcus had learned to trust his analytical skills even when others questioned his expertise. James had developed stronger project management abilities by maintaining excellence despite inadequate resources. Sandra had strengthened her commitment to quality standards regardless of external challenges. "We're not the same people who walked into that basement 6 months ago," Patricia had observed during our team meeting last week. "We're stronger, more confident, and more united than we've ever been." The basement experience had also taught us the importance of documentation and legal awareness in professional relationships. We now maintained detailed records of all client communications management decisions and contract requirements. The vulnerability we had felt when Greg violated our rights would never happen again because we understood our legal protections and client relationships thoroughly. Morrison Industries had become more than just a client during this journey. They had become partners who valued our success as much as their own. Their loyalty and support during the crisis had demonstrated the kind of business relationships that made professional work meaningful and rewarding. The expansion opportunities that had emerged from Morrison's confidence in our team were creating exciting challenges for the coming year. 3 new manufacturing clients wanted to replicate the success Morrison had achieved through our partnership. Each new relationship would require the same dedication to excellence and integrity that had characterized our original work with Morrison Industries. CEO Williams had asked me to lead the company's new client partnership division, overseeing all major account relationships and developing the service standards that would guide Pinnacle Solutions' future growth. The position represented not just personal advancement, but the opportunity to ensure that other employees would never face the kind of betrayal and abuse that Greg had inflicted on our team. "Your experience has given you unique insight into what protects both employees and clients from unethical management," she had explained during our discussion about the new role. "We need that perspective to guide our growth and maintain our integrity." The basement that had seemed like exile had actually been the foundation for everything we had achieved. The adversity that Greg intended to break our spirits had instead strengthened our resolve and demonstrated our true capabilities. Justice had prevailed not through vengeance, but through persistence, professionalism, and the truth about competence versus corruption. Looking back, I realized that Greg's betrayal had been a gift in disguise. It had forced us to prove our worth, strengthen our relationships with clients, and develop the resilience needed for greater success. The basement experience had been painful, but it had also been transformative. The lesson I carried forward was simple but profound: integrity and excellence will always triumph over corruption and mediocrity, but only if you have the courage to stand up for what's right and the patience to let justice unfold naturally. Sometimes the best response to betrayal is not immediate confrontation, but steady persistence in doing the right thing while allowing others to reveal their true character through their actions. Morrison Industries had taught us that client relationships built on trust, competence, and mutual respect could weather any storm. Pinnacle Solutions had demonstrated that companies with strong values would ultimately support employees who embodied those values. Our team had proven that loyalty, dedication, and professional excellence would always find recognition and reward even when the path seemed uncertain. The corner office with its beautiful view was meaningful, not because of its prestige, but because it represented the validation of everything we had worked to achieve. We had been tested by betrayal, corruption, and systematic abuse, but we had emerged stronger and more successful than ever before. As I signed Morrison Industries' contract renewal, I thought about the employee who would read this story and wonder whether integrity really does triumph over corruption in the modern business world. The answer, based on our experience, is absolutely yes, but only if you're willing to fight for it with patience, documentation, professionalism, and unwavering commitment to excellence. The basement taught us that your worth is not determined by where others try to put you, but by the quality of work you choose to do regardless of circumstances. Greg thought he could diminish our value by changing our working conditions, but he discovered that excellence is portable and cannot be suppressed by office politics or physical location. Justice came not because we demanded it, but because we continued serving our clients with dedication while documenting the truth about what was happening. Morrison Industries noticed the difference between competence and incompetence immediately. CEO Williams recognized integrity when she saw our team's response to crisis. The legal system punished corruption when the evidence was clear and undeniable. The story ends with a simple truth: good work speaks for itself. Corrupt behavior eventually exposes itself, and patient persistence in doing the right thing will always lead to ultimate victory. Have you ever faced a situation where someone tried to take credit for your hard work or diminish your contributions? How did you handle it, and what would you do differently, knowing that integrity and patience can be your most powerful tools for achieving justice? Thank you for joining me on this journey from betrayal to triumph. Remember that your worth cannot be diminished by others' actions, only revealed by your own choices. I hope this story inspires you to stand up for what's right, protect the people who depend on you, and trust that excellence will always find its proper recognition. Please like this story if it resonated with your own experiences. Subscribe for more stories about overcoming workplace challenges, share it with anyone who needs encouragement to fight for justice, and comment below with your own experiences of turning adversity into triumph.